audio session. What episode number is this? Jeez, it's like
14.
13? 14.
14.
Okay. Get myself going. Wah, wah, wah. Why did I hear that come out of here, not there? Let me change my logic settings. Apparently that's probably because I just updated my computer. All right. Try that one more time. Yes, my name is Leo, and I'm Giant Rat.
Yeah, I'm Randy, and I'm not.
Okay, let me make sure that sounds good.
I mean, we
Yeah,
don't
that's
have to
fine.
dive in. I want to be live when we're scheduled to be live.
Yeah, now I'm ready to record. If you want to start recording.
All right. Count it down.
All right, 3, 2. Wait, let me wait. Okay, 3, 2, 1.
Great. Hi, welcome to Depth Perception. I'm Randy.
And I'm Leo.
And what
We're
are we
gonna
going to be talking
continue
about?
we're gonna be continuing a conversation we began last week. We started talking about art and some of the different things that people have said about what is and isn't art, or mostly what we had to say about the idea that certain things are and aren't art in certain situations. And today we're talking about something that I think is sort of like a supplement to that, which is uh, the way that sort of what happened when serialism in music came, like kind of moved through music academia in the last century as sort of the centerpiece, specifically Milton Babbitt's article "Who Cares If You Listen," or "The Composer as Specialist," and how the ideas that he put forth in that article, like I don't know, how they figure for us, whether they feel true, and what it means if they are and aren't. So this is going to be a conversation about elitism in music and music academia, but also it's going to be a conversation about why academics are so prone to, I think, parroting the aesthetics of science and math. The sort of the ones that are seen as more serious, more worthy of research and funding. All that and more on today's episode. So we were just talking just now about Babbitt, but let's talk about what serialism is for a little while so that we have some, for those listeners who don't have the context.
Yeah, serialism, from my understanding, is the idea that you should use all notes in equal measure. That you can kind of freely disregard the notion of keys and what does and does not belong in a piece of music, as as it is understood by classical composers, by the the established ideas of what popular music is supposed to sound like.
Popular and also traditional classical music as its own thing. Both of them have up until that point used rules. There was a lot of what's the word that I'm trying to say? There's a lot of precedent, right? There was a lot of and there were a lot of rules with in music theory, things you're supposed to learn before you can violate them. But the thing about serialism is that and I would even take what you said, disregard for key. It's even a step further. It's like the complete elimination or the attempt at avoiding the idea of a key. Think about a keyboard. There's 12 notes. You're going to be, in most popular pieces, and indeed in a lot of classical music, you're going to be using, probably 7 of them at a time, in a section or overall in a piece even, because that's what you're going to get in most popular melodies. But 12-tone serialism, as it sort of began with Arnold Schoenberg, was let's take all 12 keys of the piano, write them out in a row. That's the order that we're going to use them in the piece. We're going to cycle through them. We're going to do some permutations of those pitches, but we're always going to use every single pitch one time before we start over using any pitch again. What this does is it completely eliminates any sense of tonality. And what it doesn't do, though, at least in Schoenberg's case, and this is Boulez's beef, right? We're going to get there. It doesn't necessarily eliminate the other elements of classical and romantic, the tradition of composing classical and romantic music up until this point, right, when Schoenberg lived. And actually, it'd be good to grab a date. When did Schoenberg kind of start doing this? This would have been the early 20th century. Oh my god, I can't type because my computer's lagging. Yeah, so yeah, okay, great. We're talking about like 1919 or so, like around there. Actually, you know what? This is intriguing. Something on Wikipedia is crediting the technique to Austrian composer Joseph Matthias. I don't know exactly how to pronounce his name. But anyways, we're going to talk about Schoenberg as the first person to put this into practice and use it, right? And I think that was a later generalization. So we're talking about the early 20th century. He's writing this music that eliminates sort of the preconceived ideas of, or attempts to eliminate the preconceived ideas of pitch structure, and pitch hierarchies, meaning like there's a scale and some notes in that scale are more important than other notes. None of that anymore. You have 12 notes, all of the notes are of equal importance. What he didn't do was he didn't really challenge conventions for writing rhythms, or, if you think about there's precedents and conventions on every sort of aspect of music that's been theorized about. So that means dynamics, like how loud are you being? There's kind of unwritten rules about that, right? How long do you hold a note? Things like that, he didn't really touch. He just did this thing. He just discovered technique, 12-tone technique, lets you get away from keys, lets you get away from tonality. So it's atonal music, What Boulez is saying in his article, Schoenberg is Dead, written, I think it was published in 1952, a year after Schoenberg died, was, okay, we've gone a long way from tonal music, but Schoenberg, so what his point really is Schoenberg didn't, like I just said, he didn't really challenge the other aspects, the other sort of dimensions of musical writing besides pitch. He didn't try to break away from tonality, sort of metaphorically speaking, in the domain of rhythm or dynamics. Or timbre, for that matter. But Boulez doesn't just say that. He kind of pompously, polemically, and whinily, I don't know, scowls it for 6 pages. He writes this nasty essay, concluding with the line, "Schoenberg is dead," claiming, of course, what does he say at the end of the article? Something like, I say this without any want of creating a controversy, something along those lines. But yeah, of course it does create a minor controversy, and it's kind of why the article is famous. It probably wouldn't be as famous. I probably wouldn't have learned about it in a music history class in 2015 if it wasn't so angry and deliberately designed to at least push a few buttons. I mean, Randy, as you said, it seems like Boulez was writing this more for himself than anybody. And if you listen to his music, would certainly seem to bear that out.
Yeah, I don't think I listened to more than a few minutes of Boulez's music, but I really struggled to get through that essay, just because it's like, you know, it's written by a composer about a composer for other composers to like join in on a roasting session about like somebody who just tried to do something new, to bring a new idea into, you know, the contemporary music at the time. It's like, it's just one of those things that like probably is a valid criticism. You know, if you're somebody that agrees with what Boulez has to say, like, at which point any criticism anybody makes becomes valid if you already agree with what they're saying. But I just think generally, like you said, writing an article for yourself, it's not like a good way to get a point across. And in the opposite way to Milton Babbitt's essay, like, where even the things I do disagree with, I have a hard time like taking up arms against them, you know, because he wrote it seemingly with the intent of making it, you know, available to the layperson, you know, translating his own commentary. You know, maybe I don't know anything else about Milton Babbitt except that he wrote that article, but like, it seemed like he was at least like concerned with being understood.
Yeah.
You know, Boulez's thing is a lot more esoteric. It's like, you know, you have to have intimate knowledge of different like individual movements within Schoenberg's pieces, and you know, I can't identify a different movement within, you know, a piece of music. I mean, I have a guess at what it might be, but like, in terms of you know, the structure of music, I really I don't know what it is. So when he's complaining about, you know, what ridiculous thing did he say? I mean, the only thing I do know is that like I like Pierre Lunaire, and he gives it credit in that.
That's true. He, at the end of, after he's literally pooped all over Schoenberg for, what was it, 6 pages, he's like, Pierre Lunaire is good though. And then he's like, yeah, I mean, we could, that's pretty much how he ends it. Also, Schoenberg's dead.
Yeah, no, of course, I'm struggling to even find what I was just complaining about. But yeah, it's just one of those things. It's like, it seems to me that like Boulez had to have been an academic, and he's like, he seems fairly pompous based on his essay, and I just like, I don't see how saying that somebody isn't radical enough is like good criticism, regardless of whether or not it's valid. Like, to me, criticism is meant to give you something to think about rather than telling you what to think. And I don't know, it seemed like Boulez's only mission with that was to tell the reader what to think by using, you know, I can only guess at where it was published. I mean, was it published in like a newspaper, or was it published in like an academic collection of papers?
That's a good question. I can't remember the original publication.
Yeah, because if the publication was like for academics, then it doesn't matter if he wrote it. If he didn't write it for a layperson.
Maybe it doesn't matter in that sense, but I'd also like to point out what you just said. Like, it seems like he's telling you what to think. I think actually the fact that this was like written probably in a very niche journal where he was expecting to be understood lends credence to the idea that he was kind of giving people an opinion, you know.
Yeah, he sounds like
you know
Ben
what I mean?
Shapiro in the way that like Ben Shapiro talks fast and he uses big words that you wouldn't know if you didn't, you know, spend all your time being an edgelord on YouTube. Like,
Sure, but I mean, he's not, you know, he's not really like aiming to be a populist, you know what I mean? Like, he has specific things to say. He's kind of saying, I dare you to like understand what I'm saying. If you do, if you understood all the big words that he was using and stuff like that, if you knew exactly the sense that he meant all of those words when he was, those mathematical words he's throwing in, like, I think that probably the conclusion that you'd come to is like, this isn't a thing that really is a sure thing. He has a strong opinion. You know, to him, this is why. and like I can either choose to agree with him or not. But I don't think he's making. But I think even if you were really, really keen on everything he was saying, there wouldn't be the same strength of argument as there is in the Babbitt piece.
No, that's what I'm saying. Like it's not a strong argument at all. Like all he's doing is saying like I would have preferred if Schoenberg did X.
I think that I think that Boulez's piece is kind of like the id of sort of the arguments in favor of of
I didn't take
uh,
psychology classes.
serialism. I just mean just a sense of it's just like this sort of like irrational and like animalistic drive. I'm kind of being a goofball, but I mean whereas
I mean, it's essentially a hit piece, right? Like,
it's kind of a hit piece on a dead guy. Yeah.
and the only nice thing he does is, like, in his very last sentence, or paragraph, he says, "But Pierre Lunaire is good."
Yeah.
Which, I don't know, maybe is an attempt to justify the rest of the criticism by saying, like, even though I, like, hate all of this, he did something good.
Okay, and I do want to dwell on one argument that he makes that I think is what the actual argument is, which like this is even not understanding a lot of the things he said, I was able to get this. What he's claiming is wrong with Schoenberg. It's not just Schoenberg didn't think about those other things. He didn't think about rhythm. It's that it's not even that he thinks Schoenberg didn't know that, because he actually quotes Schoenberg and makes it clear that Schoenberg knew that he wasn't really most of the time he wasn't self-consciously like tweaking rhythm, and it just wasn't coming out. Like it was clear that Schoenberg wasn't really going in there. He was using his, own artistic instincts to craft those rhythms. But he does say this, and this is it. Schoenberg avoided even really thinking about that while composing by focusing so much on one element. And he frames it as though it's kind of a shame, because he gives all this credit to Schoenberg's early pieces that were coming up just before he really came across what he calls the dodecaphonic discovery, right? Like, I can compose 12-tone music. Like he's saying Schoenberg felt like it kind of legitimized his music. All of the other tropes, all of the other, and he speaks very contemptibly about like of the baggage, like in that any composer sort of has to confront, that comes from centuries of Western music, Western sort of serious music. So he's saying that Schoenberg justified all of the other quirks, all of the other holdovers from the canon by focusing on the one really new thing that he was doing. Do you see what I'm saying? He ceased experimentation in all of the other fields where they might have been possible once he discovered 12-tone. I mean, like, fine, sure. I'll give him that, but I still don't think that he needed to talk. I just what I'm saying is like I agree with part of what he's saying. I just think that like he didn't need to say a lot of the other things that he said. That's all.
Well, yeah, but like if Schoenberg's whole experiment was to change the tonality of music, or at least his own music and the music that his apprentices wrote, like why does it matter that he didn't experiment with rhythm and timbre? Like,
fair.
To bring Babbitt's example into it, like I would never be upset that a cancer researcher isn't like practicing dentistry. Like if you pick a discipline, like you get to do it, and you don't have to be responsible for the other things.
Right. He's kind of making Schoenberg, what he's kind of doing while writing this article is he's canonizing Schoenberg, right? He's not that Schoenberg wasn't already revered, but he's like placing Schoenberg in history and then critiquing him as a historical figure only a year after his death. And I think that's the point. Boulez was obsessed with history. Like I just like I saw a quote that I'd taken a screenshot of his, like from a few years saying destroy the, it wasn't enough to deface the Mona Lisa. We need to destroy it. By deface, I mean, the Dada copy with the mustache. I don't mean that he was saying we should actually deface it. He was saying that the burden of old art like weighs us down. So I think what he was trying to do was make Schoenberg history so that he could destroy him. Like, I think you see the same move in this article as you do in his other statements about art. That's kind of it. I mean, right? Like, I kind of agree. I mean, like, and that's the thing. Like, it's like what you're saying. Like, Schoenberg isn't responsible for what Boulez thinks we need to do with Schoenberg's legacy. He isn't like Schoenberg deciding he was really content to stop experimenting in the other domains of music, the other dimensions of music, timbre, what have you, and just saying I'm gonna do pitch. That's my thing. That's not any. It's kind of, in a way, it's just not. It's not up to Boulez to ascribe Schoenberg's personal emotions, like his personal feelings about that, or to evaluate it as he's saying what the movement Boulez is making is he's evaluating Schoenberg's career as he thinks Schoenberg should have evaluated it from Schoenberg's own perspective. That's the move that I don't like.
Yeah, like,
you know what I mean?
If he had just, even if he was just being manipulative or something, and all what he ended up doing was saying like, and now you can go out and you can finish Schoenberg's work and you can revolutionize music, like, you can take the mantle up and like be Batman, be the new Batman of music, like, he could have done that, and even if he was just being manipulative, like, he would still be saying that Schoenberg didn't do enough. He would still be like, it would still be like a takedown while also saying like, we can respect him for the work that he already did, and like, for having for having the temerity to like step outside of what is acceptable.
I think that Boulez knew what he was doing, and hearing you say that just doubles something's cooking.
No, like, I don't think there's any doubt. Like,
here's why. The second to last paragraph of that article, he goes into like literally a few sentences where he actually does talk about what is on the horizon of music, and he mentions like microtones, like let's divide the octave into more than 12 steps. Like, how about that? But it's clear that if he really wanted to write that kind of inspirational is really the wrong word, but I just mean an essay that is a call to action, he would have dealt with that earlier on in the essay, right? Like, what he was trying to do was hit you over the head with Schoenberg's part of history now. Let's take him apart. Like, it's quite literally, it's an afterthought. It's an afterthought in the same way that complimenting Pierrot Lunaire is an afterthought. It's just like, okay, we're going to do microtones someday, maybe. Who knows what electronic music will allow us to do. Pierrot Lunaire was great. Thank you. Schoenberg's dead. That's pretty much, I mean, and that's after just, again, example after example after example of why Schoenberg made mistakes and should not have. And again, it's almost like he's inhabiting Schoenberg's perspective. Schoenberg, he should not have been content. He did something. He kind of is always saying Schoenberg did something wrong. Like, he missed something that he didn't need to miss. He chose to limit himself, and that on its own, on the face, is like, it's shameful. Would you agree that there's a tone of shame in this article, or am I imagining that?
I mean, if you mean that he's trying to shame Schoenberg, yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
If he's trying to like take the guy that can't answer and like can't address it in his work going forward, yeah. Like I think he's trying to shame Schoenberg, and I think he should like. I think he should be ashamed of like writing the article the way he did. Like,
I wonder if he is. I kind of forgot to look for that, to be honest.
I don't think there's any way that you can write something with that tone at any point in your life and ever grow out of it.
He's dead too.
I'm gonna write.
Charles and I.
Boulez is dead.
Shout out to you, Charles.
Yeah, you're probably
Charles
the one viewer we have now, Charles.
We wanted to do that. We got to France in 2016, 2 composition students, and we like we had this running joke like the first day or so. Like we went to Earcom, the school that Boulez was the head of. You know, like, oh, is that Pierre Boulez? Like, is that Pierre Boulez? Every old Frenchman, every like rotund old Frenchman was Pierre Boulez. And then we found out like 3 days later that Boulez had died, like a few days after we got to France. And we like vowed to write that article. We vowed to write Boulez is dead, and a year after his death, and we didn't. And now somebody else has. And when you Google Schoenberg is dead, it comes up. So we missed the train on that. I'm
And-
sure we weren't the only people that were thinking about it.
I'm never gonna listen to Schoenberg again. Probably never gonna listen to Boulez for the first time. Probably. Was he like? Did he ever bother to be revolutionary?
Did Boulez?
Yeah.
He wrote a darn load of high total serialism, as he called it. You know, taking those five domains that he mentioned, 5 dimensions, and
Oh,
and
so
serializing all of them.
so let me be a shitlord like he was, and say that he didn't do anything. He just took something that Schoenberg came up with and ran with it after he couldn't.
I'm not going to argue with you. Boulez eventually softened a little bit and like let some choice back into his music later, which is what makes me curious about whether he did regret this a little bit later.
Yeah, it's just
Maybe
one-
he didn't. I have a feeling Boulez, I think he's probably always a little bit arrogant, even if he softened up a little bit, and he probably viewed this as a necessary step for him.
Like, were they not friends?
No, I don't think so, because Schoenberg was older. I mean,
'Cause it
he
seems
was
like
much
so- like-
older.
If they had been good friends, like you'd almost be able to excuse like completely the tone of
Yeah.
Schoenberg is dead.
Sure, but I mean, I'd be shocked by the tone, but I'd also say, well, if they were friends, like they must have just had that kind of relationship.
Like he might have written that to him on his birthday or something. If they were friends.
Yeah, right. Like as a roast.
Yeah.
Oh my god, that's funny.
It's just one of those things. Like you can't like.
Who fucking calls me but Charles? Hold on, I gotta tell him I have to go.
I told you he was our only viewer.
Charles. Hey, I'm recording the episode of the podcast right now, and you'll never guess what we're talking about.
You should tell him it's live too.
No, we're talking about Schoenberg is dead right now. Yeah. I was just talking about you on the we're live on Twitch right now if you wanna tune in. But if not, you'll hear it next week. Nah, I can't, but I did talk to him earlier. I'll talk to you tomorrow. All right. Okay. Sure. Bye. What? Cool. Bye. Speak of the devil.
Yeah. And he showed up
Anyways,
here.
I would not have answered that phone call for anybody else except Charles.
I wasn't quite sure why you did answer it in the first place.
Oh,
Yeah, I've said all I want to say about Boulez.
okay. Yeah.
I just think I just don't think there was any good reason to frame that article in the way that he did. I think it was like a waste of his own energy when he could have just gone out and like composed the rock opera that he wanted to, or whatever he did.
I'm trying to imagine a Boulez rock opera. Wait, he did compose an opera, or he was gonna compose an opera towards the end of his life. What was it? It was something kind of interesting, so I'm gonna look it up.
Well, because he was the one that's spent the whole fucking thing talking about Wagner and Valhalla and
Oh yeah, Wagner was the one non-20th century composer that he conducted ever.
of course he was a Nazi.
Let me see. I can find it pretty easily. I'm almost there.
Find what?
I wanted to see what it was, the opera oh yeah. Oh yeah. Boulez was gonna do an opera of Waiting for Godot, which I think is appropriate. God is dead, Schoenberg is dead. Waiting for Godot.
I've only ever heard of Ring of the Nibelung.
Waiting for Godot is that story by Beckett?
Samuel Beckett. I
Yeah.
don't know.
And it's like in French because Beckett wrote in French for some reason, found his voice in French. And it's like widely believed to be a metaphor for like, I don't know, Godot is this person who they're waiting for, but he's not actually there. Also to play. I think it actually is a play, is written as a play. Anyways, um, he never wrote his Waiting for Godot rock opera, and it's a damn shame.
Yeah.
So let's talk Babbitt. Randy is boo-boo for Babbitt. Randy loves Milton Babbitt.
I really like the second half of the article, yeah. Just because I agree with it. I want to be able to, I wish I could be supported by a university for, making mediocre music.
So let's fast forward to 6 years after Schoenberg's dead. Milton Babbitt writes the essay, Who Cares If You Listen? Let's summarize his main argument. I'll attempt it. He basically, what Babbitt wants is for people who write serialist music, total serialist music like him and Boulez, to have support from the universities they work for that is not conditioned on public perception of their work. He wants academic freedom, like the same type of academic freedom that researchers and scientists, mathematicians, in his view, have access to. Now, of course, it's a little more complicated than scientists don't have to, pick their research topics based on what the public wants. Sometimes scientists do, and that's why we have so many studies about caffeine and why every few years the public seems to get confused about whether caffeine is good or bad for your heart. Pop studies are a thing, and like they generate funding. But Babbitt's point still stands. Like, composers, they work among other academics. Their friends are other academics. Socially, and also in terms of class, like that's who they interact with. They interact with like the college professorial class. These are the people they know, and it's got to be a little bit of a it's got to feel weird to have most of the other people that you interact with, that you're friends with, your colleagues, are not be beholden to like, again, the sort of the fickle whims of like, the public that's meant to consume your music. Whereas, again, those people just, I feel like I spoke that a little bit wrong, but you get what I'm saying. What do you think about this? Do you think, you kind of hinted at what you think already, but do you think that there's any difference between a composer wanting freedom from public perception, the freedom to pursue what they think is necessary to pursue for the sake of knowledge or the sake of art? Or is it the same, or is it different from what the scientist does, or even, I don't know, the linguist, even anybody who does research or theory? What's the
well, I mean, there's a question of importance, right? Like, obviously what scientists generally do is more important than the arts, like as far as like the advancement of humanity is concerned. But like, that's not the only thing that academia is interested in, because they do, like, you explained to me that there's like composer culture in academia, which is something I've never and would never be exposed to. But like, what value is there in music to sticking to like the rigidly defined ideas of classical music, like contemporary classical music? Like, I said before the show that like the universities don't want to, train the next generation of great country singers. Universities and academia doesn't care about rap. What are you doing?
What am I doing?
Yeah.
What do you mean?
I thought you were doing like a finger dance or something.
No, it's just like
Oh,
rubbing my hand.
okay. Because
I'll stop.
no, it was just creeping into frame, and it was like bobbing.
It's unsettling.
It wasn't
Kind of.
unsettling. I thought it was funny.
Oh, okay. I can keep doing it.
No, moment's gone. Um, yeah, academia doesn't care about like raising a generation of great country singers, or like preserving musical traditions outside of classical music. Like, who has there been since like Alan Lomax that's like tried to figure out folk music, like traditional music, and I don't think he was doing
Well,
that for,
there's been plenty of people that have tried to figure it out, and damn too few people that actually have figured out a way to procure the
well, yeah,
resources
but
to just
if
fucking
I'm
record
right,
it.
wasn't Alan Lomax wasn't he working for like the Library of Congress or something like that?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, so it wasn't like a strictly academic thing. It was like capturing, the musical history of the nation, the Patrick musical history of the nation, from the Negro spirituals and field hollers and like proto blues and country western
Hmm.
music and things like that. From
Yeah.
like, I mean, I think he also collected like, oh no, that was Child that did like the British Isles folk music. So I don't think Alan Lomax had anything to do with that. Um, but like, you would think that would be like the purview within the purview of like a university, right? It's something that they would have an interest in, like,
Well, it does happen. Universities do that.
oh,
They do
maybe,
do
I
field
don't know.
recording,
Don't say doo doo.
like field work. They do. Universities indeed do field recording. Um, but universities also try to figure out, what the music is or whatever. And
Yeah, but like
um,
the thing of it is though that there would be, there's not like a culture, now of like, I have to imagine that Alan Lomax was like recording contemporary music that became like part of the folk idiom, right? Like,
yeah, a lot of the time, and things that were already in the folk idiom.
yeah, but
As a
like
musicologist, yeah, and that's the
that
key.
doesn't seem to be what like music academia is doing. Like,
Well,
they seem
it's
interested
not
in
enough to say that. It's two different things, right? Like there's musicology and there's composition. There was a time when there were great composers who did both. Like there's a couple Hungarian composers who were really famous for this. The most famous is Bela Bartok, and the other is what's his first name? Zoltan Kodály. I can't remember his first name. That might be wrong. Hold on. Yeah. Said it right, or close enough to write for me to be satisfied. Um, if you're Hungarian and I said it wrong, let me know. Write me. But uh, these people like did both, and they did theorize about what in the folk music made it passable, down through generations. They talked about general trends that they saw over large land areas of land, and then they took those ideas and they used them in very creative ways to compose songs. Like it'd be fun to talk about Bartok sometime. Like his music is ingenious for like the things that he changes when he takes this folk song and like sets it to like a new harmonization or whatever. They're ingenious changes that reveal something about what the folk song is, or at least something about what he thinks the folk song is. And he won't actually tell you exactly what he thinks it is, but he just shows you, and you gotta kind of get a feeling. It increases your appreciation of what folk song is through a specific academic lens without telling you this lens is right. That's not the same thing, of course, as what like that. I want that to be supported. Full stop.
Well, what I'm saying is like they're happy to like collect the music and everything, but they're not gonna put like an 18-year-old like on a train schedule across the country to like ride in a baggage car and collect music from people in disparate parts of the country and everything. But they're happy to send a bunch of kids to
Yeah.
Berlin or Paris or whatever to learn about the history of classical composition.
Yeah.
Like a university could be bankrolling that sort of thing. They could be like
Mm-hmm.
They could be like
It's
giving kids turntables and sending them to, find the smallest record store in the country and or collect like.
Right, I have personal experience
Okay.
with. I haven't looked far and wide, but my dad and I got interested in this. He has really good recording gear. He knows how to record mobily. We were talking like, where are the grants? Like, who are the people who are doing this, who are going around and recording folk music today? Because it's not like it's all gone. It's not like they got it all. And how do
But I
we
think they think they
like
do though.
find that?
I think they think
Yeah,
they do.
that's. I think you're. I think that's. I think that might actually be a big part of why we couldn't find anything. I mean, we didn't reach out to the Library of Congress, and to be honest, I only emailed one. I emailed one musicologist who made recordings that I really liked, and I got no response. But yeah, and there's a place in Syracuse. There's the Belfer Audio Archives. They're very cool. I actually got to talk to them. They do wax cylinders. They have the largest collection of wax cylinders and wax cylinder like reproductions in plastic of anywhere in the world. So they've like kind of got that down. They've recorded so many of these wax cylinder recordings before they've been lost, but they kind of don't do much more than that on any given day. Like they do other stuff, but that's their focus. To the point that I didn't think to reach out to them about anything like, going out and find, any other kind of archiving projects. But I mean, the fact is like, it's not that big of a building. There's not that many of these things in the world. There's not that much attention being paid to it. Like you probably didn't know that there was a wax cylinder archive in Syracuse, did you? I didn't know until I walked into it on a class field trip. Like
No. And the thing of it is though, right? Like it's almost understandable that like academia is not taking an interest in like the new folk scene, right? Because it's all preserved on YouTube. I mean, I bet you can go to any town in the country and somebody has a YouTube channel active there. Right.
yeah,
And like obviously they're not all going to be active, but there are musicians everywhere and musicians who go from everywhere to play everywhere else. And like you'll find them somewhere if they're like at all interested in performing their music.
Yeah.
So like academia has an excuse, right? What you can't excuse them for is that there isn't like a folk music conservatory at major universities and things like this. Like I get that there's not one at like OCC. I get that there isn't like at community colleges and things, but like is there any reason that Syracuse University isn't like farming students out to Appalachia to the Adirondacks to like.
You say that and I'm like, I fucking wish.
Yeah, well, you don't go there anymore anyway, do you?
Yeah, but I could walk there and ask them, and I know what they would say.
Sure.
They would say, "No, sorry, kid."
And the reason for that is because it would not make a penny. Because the fact of the matter is nobody gives a shit about folk music except for like people like me.
Right, it would make a penny, and the people that have the money that would put a grant would fund a grant like aren't.
But the thing is, like
said, they don't give a shit about folk.
Other things that don't make money is like what if you spend all this time and resources training, a kid to go and compose film scores or whatever, and he always does a bad job and he doesn't get any gigs. Like that doesn't make any money and it doesn't generate anything of cultural significance.
That's true. I mean, the composers that succeed, the number of composers who are film composers is like, there's like, there's going to be like probably less than 30 for all of the major pictures in the country, and only a few of those are going to be people that like less than 5 at any given time.
Yeah, and how many of those are going to be people that were trained at school?
Actually, a lot of them, but they're the kind of people who are really, really knowledgeable about the history of music. Like John Williams, he has like.
See, I'm not talking about John Williams. I'm talking about like Disaster Piece or like Ludwig Göransson. People that are Disaster Piece did like It Follows and he does video game
Okay.
music too. Ludwig Göransson right now is doing The Mandalorian,
Mm.
and like he's doing really crazy things with you know score. Um, but like it doesn't matter if it doesn't make money because
Well, here's something I wanted to say that you said earlier that I actually kind of wanted to come swing back around to real quick. You said something about academia, music composition, and the sciences, and one being like, whoa, sorry. You said something about music composition being like less important for like bettering society, and I wanted to swing back around to that because I don't
I don't think I
necessarily
said bettering society. I think I said advancing. Like
advancing society.
there's not a single
Okay.
painting that could ever be that's going to make people build like spaceships that can go to Mars tomorrow. Like which is why like schools focus on STEM and everything, and like arts programs all across the country are failing and underfunded and like boo boo.
Um, yeah, but I mean, I just mean, right, advancing society. So you meant it in the sense of like generating revenue.
Like generating progress. Like I
But
don't
what is progress? Do you mean progress? By progress, do you mean something that isn't attached to
I'm talking about like
monetization?
material progress, yeah. Like
Okay, so you don't mean like progress as in the betterment of society, because you didn't use the word betterment. You meant advancement in the sense like something that can be
there's
monetized.
like like if Pete Seeger can like inspire a socialist revolution in the country, like art doesn't change countries. Like it can define like culture in a country, but it's not going to like change things in the way that like revitalizing NASA might.
But why do we think that revitalizing NASA is going to be done for any purpose other than weapons related purposes?
Well, it doesn't matter what the purpose is. It matters what happens. Like
But why do we think anything is going
obviously
to
there
happen?
obviously are the only reason that NASA is going to be like revitalized is to go and like farm out asteroids, like to strip mine space bodies. But like the things that can happen from that is that we get like a bullet train that takes me across the country whenever I want, or like a huge project.
Listen, maybe that'll happen. All I'm saying is, what I want to say is, I disagree with the idea that music and academia are genuinely different in that way. That these fields can't convert.
I'm not
Like,
saying that
I
I
don't
think
mean
they
that. I don't
should
mean that
be.
they
I'm
have to
saying I
convert.
think they are. I'm
What I'm
saying that
okay.
like schools don't care about the arts because they don't get anything out of it. Like it's not like you're a school that gets a cut from the art conservatory just because like they have like a crappy exhibition or whatever. Like you get a cut, you get like money from the lab that does big experiments or
Right.
whatever labs
What
do.
I'm saying is that the what the lab does has nothing to do with bettering society or advancing society in any way. It has nothing to do with getting you the bullet train. If you get the bullet
I'm
train,
not
it's a
saying
side
that
effect.
that's the purpose. I'm saying that it doesn't matter what the purpose is. Like the results are the thing that I'm talking about. Like art isn't going to make anything happen that's like different than just an idea. Like schools funding folk music it's not gonna do anything. Like what it does is like it provides an avenue for people that are like interested in accelerating like bluegrass or something. It provides them an avenue to be able to do that, to like make changes to bluegrass, to like figure out what bluegrass looks like in 2020, without having to like worry about not being able to market it. Like I'm saying that's what they could be doing, just in the same way that like they don't really have to worry about like publicizing the experiments that don't work or that like don't yield
Hmm.
results that matter. Like that's what I'm saying. And maybe I'm wrong, maybe like I'm just stupid and wrong, but like schools focus on STEM because they make money out of it, and like
Oh yeah, I don't
it's
disagree with that.
and like regardless of what their intent is, like focusing on STEM brings material change. Like,
Well, I would just de-emphasize the fact that it changes anything. That has nothing to do with
what do you think I'm
why it's
saying?
funded.
I'm not saying that's why it's funded. You keep saying that I'm saying why it's funded. That's why it's funded. Like, it doesn't matter why they fund it. They fund it because they get more
What
money
I'm
back from it than they put
what I'm
into it.
saying is what I'm saying is I'm hearing an implication that may not be there, but I keep hearing it that they're funding it because it changes things.
No, I'm saying they fund it because it brings in more money, but it's good that they
That
fund
I
it
agree
because it
with.
brings change. Like,
That's what I disagree with. I disagree with that it's good that they fund it because it brings change. Because I disagree with the cost like being justifiable. That's or at least I'm
so
not
what?
willing
You
to
are
say
you saying that like schools shouldn't fund STEM?
what I'm saying is
I'm
that
just
the
saying they
current
should also fund music, regardless of whether or not it brings in money.
I know you think that and I agree with that too. What I'm saying is the current formulation of STEM is so directly informed by the military industrial complex, capitalist like systems of like channeling money like from the government through universities to companies under the guise of military research where the military takes whatever technology is useful to them but the real function of this is like generating consumer goods so that the people who own the companies get to put that money in like get that money to people like and then also the pharmaceutical industry it's the same. It's like similar channels of money, similar motivations, but it's like drugs instead of like consumer goods, and therefore they have to contort drugs into something like into a commodity rather than being like something that it should just exist to help people. What I'm saying is that system of funding, I reject. I don't think that the current cost is worth what is being produced. Otherwise, fewer people would be dying. I'm not
Yeah, but
saying
think about how
universities
much
in
fucking
some form shouldn't be set funding science, technology, education, and math. I'm just saying that the current paradigm is shit, and
I'm
like
not arguing that
I
the
don't think that it's that we're getting more out of it than we would be if we were funding music in equal measure. I don't think it's like we've done the one thing that's more important. Now we have to do this other thing.
yeah, but if science was
That's
privatized, like all they would do is sell things to the military. Like,
No, science should not be privatized. What I'm saying is science is already virtually privatized via like
Jesus Christ,
very well entrenched routes through universities. The money still goes to private companies. It just gets laundered in academic institutions. What I'm saying is that's shit, and academic institutions like that shouldn't exist. If we can pass a law that forces people to like have to fund uh, arts within universities more, which that's the only way it's going to happen, then we can certainly pass laws that limit what this money can be used to do within universities and who they can turn to, who they can sell themselves out to, and stuff like that. And this also involves like reforming how universities are run. Why do old rich donors run the universities? Like conflict of interest there. Like if we're really trying to pursue knowledge, then why is that going on?
sure.
Was there anything else that you wanted to say? I feel like he's getting the vibe you still feel misunderstood and that maybe I missed something.
And I'm just,
I don't know.
I gotta be honest. Like, it almost feels like you're doing it on purpose. Like, all I'm saying is that like it's good, regardless of like how shady the practices are. Like, good things happen because science is like privatized by the military industrial complex. Like, we wouldn't have the internet without that. And like, regardless of like how I think the internet is shitty and we shouldn't have stories on Twitter now. Like, it's it's a good thing that it happened. It's a good thing if infrastructure is improved because like they figure out how to make roads that are heated so that snow and black ice don't form. Like, and if the only reason they do that is because the military like wants to be able to move things across the country faster so that they can point them at China, like it's
Well, in the same way that I would agree that like it's good that the internet exists and the people who developed the technologies that led to the internet being able to exist probably didn't all want the internet to exist because a few of them probably lost out. But I also don't think it's necessarily good if a thing that seems just to be nitpicky, if like the road thing happens, that might not end up being good. It might end up being bad for the environment. There might be weird unforeseen consequences. It might make possums go to sleep in the middle of the road, and then they go extinct.
I mean, I guess if you account for every possibility that all things that happen ever are bad, but like it would be like a good thing if cars stopped sliding off the road. Like all I'm saying is that like just because the people that are doing something have bad intentions, like if a good thing happens, it's not still bad.
Mm-hmm.
Just because there's other implications. I mean, the fact that there are roads at all disenfranchises moles. But I still want roads.
Yeah. The fact that there's like an internet now like disenfranchises ghosts because
all ghost videos are bunk.
Yeah,
can be debunked.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, but like the thing is, they what is there a school in the nation that funds anything more than its big sports team?
No.
Except for like MIT, who's like a joke at all sports as far as I know. Like
yeah, but they're not a joke at simping for the government.
Yeah.
And corporations.
Yeah. But like they don't pay those kids. They don't pay the athletes who bring in all that money that they're able to like
That's true. I get annoyed when I hear people argue
with
me about how they shouldn't be paying those people.
They'd probably be making more money than like half the people in the like NBA. Like think about the fucking Orange. Like they would be making so much money. Like some of those contracts in the NBA are like great, and I would love to make that much money. Like for playing basketball, by which I mean sitting on the bench, like warming the pine or whatever. Yeah. But like think about how much money the kids like, or like Georgetown or whatever, like the big basketball schools are, or fucking Alabama football.
Yeah.
Like think about how much money those kids would be making. Like, you could. Those kids don't have an incentive, right, to do well in school because they're not going into academia after they're off the football team. Like they're going into professional football. So why not like
university has an incentive to like help them cheat on their tests? So why
do they even need to be in class at that point? Just hire them to play football, and like, but you can pay like, you can pay like the kids who want to be folklorists, or like true. You can make sure that the kids who like. I would like to be writing songs, but I have to go like work a full-time job outside of school. Plus I commute anyway, like, finance a dorm for them and like food, and let them like be academics about something separate from, just what the school wants. Like, I mean, obviously it's never going to happen because it's not what the schools want. It's not what the donors want. It's not what the board of education or whoever it is, board of directors at a school, it's not what they want. But like, it could happen. I mean, there are state schools. Why doesn't the state have like a vested interest in like preserving like cultural moments that happen in the state? Doesn't the state have like an interest in, promoting singers and songwriters and novelists and all kinds of things that come out of the state because like you can hold festivals from the school and generate huge amounts of tax revenue and everything?
It's funny.
Like how much do you have to pay? Like how much do you have to pay an artist to survive? Like there's the trope of the starving artist for a reason, and it's because they get by. Like,
yeah,
it doesn't cost much. Like they could make so much money by doing that. Or you could just you could like if you hold a festival, it doesn't matter what happens at the festival, right? People are going. Like nothing good happens at Lollapalooza, but people go. And spend outrageous amounts of money, and the state rakes in a ton of revenue, like the city, the state. So like, you can do anything at a festival, and people are gonna come because you get to drink, and like nobody cares if you like drop ecstasy.
But don't we need a local music culture to be able to have like regional music festivals?
Yeah, wouldn't it be great if a university like stepped up and said we're going to cultivate regional music?
It'd be great. It'd be fucking amazing.
Because it's never gonna happen if like you or I try to do it.
No.
But a university has like cachet, and they can offer things like I
I
can't.
know some people that were trying to organize a fringe festival in the style of the Edinburgh
Yeah.
Fringe Festival because you can organize one. And
Are they poor?
I went to the meeting for it. One of them was poor, but they had
Are they very rich? Because otherwise they're not going to be able to put on a festival.
it had been co-opted by somebody who was like, I don't think they were rich, but they knew how to talk the language, and it was gross. It was like they were like pretending that they were voting on things, and they were like, okay, so like anybody like immediately right now have like any reasons to like any points, and they're like, oh, okay, never mind, okay, so we're just gonna go ahead with like the three of us as the leaders, okay, like, and I was just like, wow, this is weird, and I left. I was like, maybe this will be a thing in 5 years. That'll be great, but I can't be involved in this. This is very strange.
Was it Germany that was like subsidizing independent artists during the pandemic now?
Oh, really? That's great.
Yeah.
If it was
Like, but just imagine if that happened all the time.
fucking Europe,
Like,
it happens.
You don't need like a huge roster. I'm not asking them to pay like everybody that's like me that like is good at playing guitar and good at singing and like wants to be paid for not doing it professionally. Like,
Yeah.
they don't have to reach out to people like me, but imagine if they got like 5 people from Oswego County that were really, really good at like, one's like the great songwriter of country music from here, and one's like the great rapper, and whatever, like the great drummer, like, they could like really take care of those kids and like prepare them for a future in music, and like,
That's true. And that's got value in it.
What school was it? SU that had that jazz festival that you and I had
used to.
attended?
It's failed. It's gone bankrupt. They don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
Hosmic and I last year
How
we went to what we
does
thought
a
was the
festival
jazz
go bankrupt?
festival.
Who were
We
they?
went to what we thought.
Were
Oh
they
my
paying
God,
like
it's
big
bad.
acts?
Sometimes they would
Did
have
they
like
get,
one
Galactic
big
or
act.
something?
They didn't quite get Galactic, but they got people on par with Galactic. They got Aretha Franklin one year.
Well,
That was
I mean,
good.
she was in Blues Brothers. She probably worked cheap.
It was free.
Well, there's your problem. Like, things don't need to be free.
It was free. Was it free? I think it was free. At any rate, kept it going for a long time. I think it stopped being a thing last year, and Hosmic and I went to what Hosmic was like, oh, there's a jazz festival tonight. We went to it. I was like, this is a jazz festival? It was downtown. It wasn't in the same place. And I ran into a professor there, and I was like, why is the jazz festival so different? And he was like, oh, this is the Jazz and Wine Festival. The jazz festival's dead. The Jazz and Wine Festival. It was fucking sad. It wasn't even really jazz. There's like a guy on stage making like sexist comments to like somebody in the audience, like as a joke. It was just annoying.
Yeah, it's no wonder that it failed. They got like shitty stand-up comedians. There's a fucking Bill Burr.
It was a musician. It was worse.
Oh,
Like
that
he
is
wasn't even
worse.
paid to do that.
I don't know.
Yeah.
I know it's literally never going to happen in this country. I'll bet every dollar I have on it, which not many dollars.
Yeah, 5 kids from the region. I mean, it'd be great. More, it should be more though. Even that.
Well, yeah,
like,
but like
we can't even get that.
yeah, but this is Oswego County.
We can't even. Yeah.
They'd be so desperate.
That's
They'd
true.
be like they would have to get like Ritter and Ruddy involved. Jesus, kitty.
Oh, for sure.
You are the worst kind of kitty. Yeah, they would. I mean, all I'm saying is that like the school could expropriate some funds and think about the arts for a second. I mean, Pulaski did it. Pulaski did all kinds of shit like that. Tax.
That's true. That's what's annoying about going to college and everyone being like, "Oh, there's no money for this."
Yeah, but the fucking students had to organize it at PAX, though, was the thing. Which is great. It's great that Sam
Yeah.
Sheets did that, or whoever it was. Sorry for getting your full name on the podcast.
Yeah. Yeah, you also
And
said
where you
Ritter
went
and
to
Ruddy
school.
in a disparaging way. You should probably.
Well, I usually say their names in a disparaging way because I've heard their music before.
I love them and I love their music.
Sorry if you're listening. Rudy, whatever his name. What's his name? Andy?
Andy Ruddy.
Yeah. Sorry if you're listening, bud. Yeah, whatever.
Where were we at? This is a good time to just transition back to the outline.
Yeah, let's just go to thing 3. And
Oh, yeah, I was gonna say, oh, can we talk about the alternate titles? The composer is specialist. The composer is anachronism. What do they mean? But honestly, I feel like the moment's kind of passed, and that's kind of okay. Are we
well,
on
it
the same
just
page?
like why can't first of all, like I disagree that like the word composer should mean people that make classical sounding music.
Yeah,
I don't think that's what composer should mean. I think apparently that is what it means.
it's what
To
it
people
means to
that don't
people
read
who make,
Webster's, but
it's what composer means if you're an academic. It's not what composer means
yeah,
if you're
but
not.
that's the thing is that fucking academics don't get to decide.
Well, that's what annoys me about.
I mean,
Milton
this
Babbitt.
like takes us straight into the next thing anyway, so it's fine. But academics don't get to decide what a composer is. Like, fucking, and neither does Webster's for that matter. But like, vernacular does. Like, colloquial language does. What the word means when people say it. Like when I say composer, when I've heard anybody ever say composer, I've never pictured like Beethoven. I mean, he definitely is in the picture, but like I also see like like I was trying to think of like a dummy, like I see like what's his idiot from Metallica, Lars Ulrich. Like I see Lars Ulrich and I see Pete Seeger. Like
I'm like a little surprised
What?
that's your opinion. I agree, but
Why
I'm
are you
surprised
surprised by
because I
that?
feel like I feel like we might not actually. I feel like you might agree more strongly with Milton Babbitt's.
I agree very strongly with Milton Babbitt. I think he's
I do-
not only do I agree with him, I think he's absolutely right. So
The reason I
guess I
s-
only do
okay,
agree with him, but
So here's what I'm getting at. The composer as specialist, the composer as like, I feel like what he's saying is the composer as the academic's idea of a composer. Like, and this is somebody who does know, like, who I feel like kind of knows better. What I mean is like he knows that there's new music being made by jazz musicians. He's a jazz pianist, but he's like a white guy who gets his credibility from an academia that's a lineage of white guys. He I think he means composer as in person who makes this kind of music. And that's why I'm surprised because I just can't imagine that you'd say that about like I think we would both recognize there's something different about saying like composer should be defined vernacularly and saying like scientist or vaccine or
but those things
I don't know 5G
no, but
should
those
be
but those things have
vernacular.
like a specific meaning. You're not a scientist if you cook meth. Just because you can do chemistry does not mean you are a scientist. I can do chemistry because I took chemistry in high school. I am not a scientist. Like a scientist means that you are trained, that you know exactly what to look for because you have been trained in the scientific method. Like, but that's not what a
So there's
composer
kind of
means.
a ritual.
A
So there's kind of a
composer-
ritual thing about scientists for
No, because
for-
like,
I would
would
say
you
for our
ever?
society.
Would you ever?
Like-
Just as you're as much a layperson as I am, regardless
Yeah.
of what you have a degree in. Like, would you ever trust, like, the medicine that somebody cooks up in their bathtub just because they like can say what the chemical structure is? Like,
Would I ever
yeah, because like,
in their bathtub? No, but I mean,
would you trust? Would
literally-
you trust the
here's
person? Would you trust a person that wrote a song in their bathroom?
Hold up.
It's
All that you're saying is that whereas there's a distinction between somebody who makes music and
Dude, a
somebody
composer-
who
a
makes
composer
music
is a person
in
that
let
makes
me
music.
finish. Somebody who makes music and somebody who makes music in a university, and that there is not an equivalent distinction where you have somebody who does science and somebody who was trained. When I said ritual, I meant somebody who is trained in the rites of science, somebody who is fundamentally different from you or I, not a layman, not a layperson.
No, it's like-
because they like went through those rites, like they were initiated into whatever. Even if those rites are just fucking tests, like they
No,
did it.
look.
and now they can get research. And
I think a
don't
better
no,
comparison-
Let me finish.
Okay.
Let me finish because I'm not. I don't think that
Go
I
ahead.
don't think it's clear whether or not I agree with you or not. What I'm saying is, I'm just trying to make sure that we're both acknowledging the same distinction, right? Like you're acknowledging the distinction of like, I'm not the same as a scientist. Like I don't have the legitimacy to do science that a scientist has if I'm not trained. Whereas somebody who writes songs and somebody who writes songs at university, there's a sense in which they're on equal footing in terms of the legitimacy of their output. That's what you're saying, right?
Because the output is the thing that matters. Like with science, the output is not the thing that matters. Like I don't want the vaccine that you cook up in your kitchen. Like
Right, you can try as hard as you want as a musician to create something that isn't music, but you're probably going to fucking create music. Not so for the scientist at home.
no, I think a better comparison is like the Proud Boys and the Police, right? Regardless of how awfully bad the police are, they have training and fucking the authority of the state. Proud Boys have bad ideas and guns. Like, I'd rather have, as much as I don't want either of them patrolling the streets that I occupy, like, in my daily life, there's one that there's one that has at least some kind of accreditation instead of, like, self-imposed authority. Right?
No, I don't necessarily want to fully agree with that. Just because
you
I get-
think
'cause-
you're a bigger leftist than I am.
no. No.
Okay.
Because
Argue.
the accreditation thing, I don't know, like I mean, yeah, does it make me like on some level like more comfortable to know that the police have a badge? Yeah, but like that's like there's so many layers to that. Like it's a thing that yes, on an intuitive level, like I'd rather have that than like somebody with a fucking swastika or an iron cross on
No,
their
because
jacket.
you can pick the sheriff. You can pick the person who's the police's boss. You don't get to pick the boss of the Proud Boys. That's Gavin McInnes. No matter what you want to, like, no matter how much you want to change it.
How can you pick the sheriff? How can you pick the
Because you
police's
vote for
boss?
sheriffs.
But does everybody? I just mean like
But
only
do
if
you,
you're not
like,
disenfranchised.
you can organize and you can do it. Like,
Yes, you have more control, but you still have
dude,
to go and take that control.
if Stacey Abrams, yeah, and like if you don't, it's like there's consequences for not doing it.
This doesn't have to be a conversation that we fully have. I feel like
I'm just saying,
We're
like a composer, like it's based on the quality of output, right? But a scientist, like, is based on the quality of input,
what do you mean?
right? Like, it's the training that they acquire, the knowledge that they accumulate through school. The first song you write can be the best one you ever make, and you did it like by accident because you were playing your guitar. Like, there's no qualifications required to be a musician of any kind. Like, I mean, the best guitar music right now is coming out of like the Sahara.
Yes.
Like,
There's an
they
article
don't.
that has
I know,
almost that type.
and which is why
It's a really good article.
yeah, or maybe it was the Kalahari or something, but like,
I think it's the Kalahari. Well, no, it's not the Kalahari. It's just,
I don't know
it's
where the
it's
Kalahari
Sahara.
is. I don't know which one is the Kalahari.
South.
The Arabian Desert. You
Do
don't.
you think that Babbitt wants? Sorry, I just had one more thought I wanted to run by you that I feel like you'd have an interesting thing to say on.
Yeah.
Do you think that Babbitt? Okay, so you agree
I don't
with
care what
Babbitt,
Babbitt thinks.
right?
Like,
Right, but I still want to ask.
okay.
Seems like you agree with Babbitt. I think I mostly agree with Babbitt. What I disagree with is the
Good,
insistence
crazy
on the
weird
legitimacy of serialist music as legitimate. I mean, this is a debate that's past. You know, this is 50 years.
If any music at all is legitimate, then serialism is legitimate, and like,
Right, but do you think Babbitt wants any music at all to be funded by a university, or do you think he wants the five-dimensional music of serialism?
yeah, but in the same way that like
funded by a university?
the same way that I chose to say like a folk music conservatory at Syracuse University, like he would choose to say serialism, right?
But if you're only funding one, then why are you like?
Why would you only fund one?
Why would you only fund one?
Yeah,
That's where I disagree with Babbitt.
yeah, but
I
like,
think that's a good transition into our last section too. I mean, say whatever you want to say.
all I'm
for
saying
sure,
is that
but-
like I don't have to agree with every single word that Babbitt said to agree with the sentiment. Like,
Yeah.
I don't care about serialism, and frankly, I would rather they didn't fund it. Just kidding. But like serialism doesn't have to be classical music either, does it?
I mean, technically, you could. It's one of those things where, on the one hand, like, oh, it's like getting away from all of the trappings of classical music. On the other hand, because it's so associated with academia, and because classical music already was before it, and it's the and what's it called? Um, the antecessor of God, it's a horrible word of
The antecedent.
classic of yeah, of classical music, because it comes after classical music in the lineage. Like, it's never going to be seen as not classical music, even if
Well,
it sounds
yeah,
nothing
but
like
then,
it, and its identity is a negation of classical music.
but
Like,
then,
that's the thing. You're not going to hear serialist folk music. If you do, it's a YouTube novelty or something like that. You know, that you find like,
yeah, but folk music is like folk music, which is crazy that it's only one thing is folk music. But
I know.
folk music is older than classical music.
Yeah.
Like,
And classical music historians have contrived all kinds of myths to make
and it's
classical music
pretty,
descend from monks singing in monasteries and not from folk musicians singing on the street. And it's my biggest fucking beef. And
and
we're
it's
going to do an
pretty
episode about it
fucking,
someday.
it's pretty fucking irrelevant in a way that folk music is not irrelevant.
Yeah.
Like folk music is like woven into, like, the cultural idiom.
Yeah.
Classical music is like, even for the people that love it, it's a novelty. Like, the radio in my car is tuned to a CBC like classical station, but like, it's just a novelty. In the same way that, like,
Hmm.
NPR treats folk music like a novelty. Like,
Yeah.
the only reason they play like Archie Fisher on Sundays sometimes is because, like, he has a funny voice and he plays old songs from Scotland that he translated from, like, whatever language is spoken on the Faroe Islands. Like, you know, I mean, folk music is, there is like the novelty kind of folk music that's like people in funny outfits. Like, I almost said the Village People, but I don't think we can call the Village People folk music. But maybe we will. Maybe my kids will.
Maybe
Our
someday.
children's children will. But yeah, I mean, I would say that classical music is pretty much irrelevant. I don't know, until you sprung this topic on me Sunday. I couldn't have named a classical composer that was born like that, or even lived like after 1800.
Hmm.
And if I could, I would never have guessed that they were operating less than 220 years ago. Because, like, it
Right.
all sounds old, it all sounds novel. Like, as much as I don't care what Schönberg was doing, like, you can hear innovation.
Hmm.
Like, you know, if you compare it to, like, I don't know, what is this, Moonlight Sonata? Is that what it is? Like, you can tell that they're
Yeah.
cut from the same
The
cloth.
Beethoven.
Yeah, you can tell that they're like cut from the same cloth, but they're not the same thing. We have dropped a shitload of frames. That's terrible.